Home to the nation's first state 4-H camp, the country's largest hand-cut stone structure, and the childhood home of a man nicknamed Stonewall Jackson. I'm Wayne Worth, and you're watching On the Road in West Virginia, R55 counties, Lewis County.
Before all the glit and glamour of the historical landmarks that we know and hear about today, recorded history started here on Hackers Creek in the 1760s, who was named after the county's first white settler, John Hacker. He was also accompanied a few years later in 1771 by his new neighbor, Jesse Hughes. Now, Hackers Creek was no walk in the park in the 1700s, especially when your Native American neighbors accepted payment via your scalp for settling on their sacred hunting grounds. Only the tough survived, and John and Jesse were those people.
When things got a little more civilized in 1816, the newly formed Lewis County purchased the farm of a pioneer named Henry Flesher, here where the West Fork River and Stone Cold Creek meet, and deemed it the new county seat.
Most of us know this intersection as modern-day Weston. However, it took a couple of years for the name Weston to stick, because the town was initially called Preston and then Fleshersville. In the early years, things were pretty slow going economically in this neck of the woods due to the lack of any transportation routes. So much of the economy during the early 1800s was self-sustaining agriculture. Thankfully, the 1840s brought some of the first turnpikes to the area, with the Weston and Gully Bridge Turnpike, which is today US 19, and the Stanton-Parkersburg Turnpike, which is today US 33. Lewis County was now connected with the rest of the country, and communities like Weston and Jane Lew started to slowly come alive.
But growth and prosperity to the region didn't stop with the turnpikes. The economic boom was only beginning, and it would be this place behind me that would change the county forever.
The Weston State Hospital, or Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, it's been called both throughout the years, is definitely a colossal West Virginia relic of epic proportions. There is probably no other structure in our state that has captivated the minds and imagination of people nationwide than the old Weston State Hospital. It took a little over 30 years to build, though, mostly because it became the largest hand-cut stone structure in the nation, and partly because of a war. Construction of the hospital started in 1858 when we were part of the state of Virginia. However, the project came to an abrupt stop at the start of the Civil War.
Now, the newly formed Confederate government in Richmond demanded that the unused funds of the appropriated $50,000 from Virginia be returned. However, the pro-Union restored government of Virginia seized the unused money and brought it to Wheeling.
When it got to Wheeling, the restored government of Virginia chipped in another $40 grand, and work resumed throughout the rest of the war. By 1864, the hospital was serving its first patients. With a hospital of this size, the initial intentions was for it to be self-sufficient. On the over 600 acres the hospital consumed, there was a farm and a dairy. The grounds even had its own water supply and cemetery. During the early gas boom at the turn of the 20th century, a well was even drilled on the property. The growth of the hospital meant a substantial boost in the local economy. Even the B&O Railroad built a narrow gauge line connecting Weston with Clarksburg. The hospital was a significant game changer to the area. However, for a hospital designed to treat 250 people, overcrowding would become an issue in the years that followed, and through innovation in the field of mental health, the writing was definitely on the wall. By the 1950s, the hospital had over 2,600 patients, and by the 1980s, we started to come out of the Stone Age when it came to mental health treatment, with breakthroughs in modern medicine and more available community-based services. With the opening of the new William R. Sharp Hospital in Weston, the old state hospital closed its doors in 1994. Today it's privately owned and called the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and though it's no longer a hospital, it is indeed one of the state's most notable tourist attractions. There is a little bit of everything for everyone, from ghost tours to concerts to an annual Easter egg hunt on the grounds.
Now, Lewis County didn't only flourish economically from the state hospital. The late 1800s and early 1900s also brought a boom in the timber and gas industry, and Weston was the center of that boom.
The county, like many other central West Virginia counties prior to the early 1900s, were heavily thick with virgin timber. The timber industry took off at lightning speed to the point where the railroad extended from Weston south to Sutton and Richwood. However, the early 1900s also brought the first gas boom to Lewis County, which in turn created a huge market for glass manufacturing. It's even been said that in the late 1920s there was more hand-blown stemmed glass in Weston than anywhere else in the world. By the 1980s, the glass industry had fizzled out significantly. However, its history, legacy, and its craft, on a small scale of course, still thrives in the town today.
Now, one can't tell the story of Lewis County without mentioning Jackson's Mill.
Jackson's Mill, as most everyone in West Virginia is aware of, is the site of our state's 4-H camp. However, did you know that it was also the site of our nation's first ever state 4-H camp? And also, did you know this was Thomas Stonewall Jackson's childhood stomping grounds? If you don't know this, let's back up a little. The property was initially settled by his grandfather Edward around 1800. Now, Stonewall Jackson was born in Clarksburg, West Virginia in 1824. Tragically, his father died 2 years after his birth and his mother died when he was around 7. Stonewall and his sister were brought to Jackson's Mill to live with their Uncle Cummings. At the age of 18, Stonewall left Jackson's Mill and started his military career at West Point, New York in 1842. The rest is history, as Stonewall Jackson, after Virginia seceded from the Union, became a very celebrated Confederate general who was accidentally shot by one of his troops in an ambush and died shortly after of pneumonia due to complications of a left arm amputation. As for Jackson's Mill, it was passed down through the Jackson family until 1876 when it was sold outside of the family.
However, in 1915, Monongalia Power Company, or Mon Power as we know them today, purchased the property and would hold on to it until 1921 when they donated it to the state of West Virginia to be used as a state 4-H camp, our nation's very first state 4-H camp.
Since 1921, the state 4-H camp at Jackson's Mill has developed quite extensively, with the building of a Mount Vernon-style dining hall, an assembly hall, and 14 cabins, just to name a few. It's indeed a treasure that has shaped the lives of many of our West Virginia youth for decades.
Oh, we surely can't forget about Interstate 79 in Quarter H.
If there is one thing that has sustained and helped expand growth and prosperity in Lewis County, it was definitely the building of Interstate 79 in the 1970s and Quarter H in the 1990s. I sometimes even wonder if there would have been a Stonewall Jackson Resort, which opened in 2002, without an Interstate 79. Jane Lew, which has been a town that throughout its history has thrived from a strong agricultural base in northern Lewis County, even has its own interstate exit. Weston, Buchanan, and even Elkins are close neighbors with the completion of this 34-mile stretch of Quarter H.
From turnpikes made of dirt to 4 lanes made of concrete, and all the unique treasures in between, I'm Wayne Worth, and until next time, always remember, what we value and hold important in our lives today came from events that happened yesterday, and it's when we begin to understand the events of yesterday that we fully embrace today, which makes tomorrow become less of a mystery. All right, let's get out of here before we get in trouble by the state.